Hey, this your man Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars on a Wednesday. Arden Key is the new addition to Jacksonville. I think he'll be the key to the defense having proper depth in their rush department. I'll tell you why in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, here on Locked On Jaguars at Shop Talking Wig on Twitter. I am the host of the Locked On Jaguars daily podcast because it's your team every day, and we thank you for joining us and making us your first listen. A quick reminder that we are free on all platforms and can be found at the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page. Arden Key, a pass rusher, or one of the key pass rushers, no pun intended, with the San Francisco 49ers a year ago with 6.5 sacks, a team that went all the way to the NFC Championship game. Arden Key from LSU, who was a third-round pick of the Raiders, didn't stick out there for very long, maybe a few years, but after a year with the 49ers, has made himself some money. Got a one-year, $7 million deal from your Jacksonville Jaguars to come in and be a big-time contributor in the pass rush. Does that mean that they're not going to take a pass rusher with the first overall pick? Absolutely not. This doesn't preclude that at all. Although, if anything's going to preclude that, it'll be what I saw from Evan Neal today at his workout. Dude is 340 pounds, a tad under 6'8", and moves like a DB, man. It's unbelievable how coordinated he is. I saw some former NFL players salivating over his movement and how smooth it was. But I guess the Jags were there in large numbers and doing their due diligence. But we'll get back to Arden Key. Arden Key that signing doesn't prevent them from doing anything. It does tell me that K'Lavon Chaisson's days as a lock to be here might be a little bit numbered because they still have DeJuan Smoot who can play. I've seen Jordan Smith in the offseason. He's probably gained about 20 pounds of muscle, and he was a fourth-round pick a year ago, a guy that Trent Baalke admitted needed some time and needed to get in the weight room, and it looks like that's exactly what Jordan Smith has done. But Arden Key, 6'5", 6'6", 250 pounds or so, and he just adds another element, a speed element, and an element of pass rush. Some guys just don't get it early, and he seems like the type of dude that is going to provide more than a guy who was signed in his similar situation last year, which was Jihad Ward. They're not the same type of player, and I think he gives you a lot more pass rush. He gives you a lot more edge. He gives you a lot more length, and he can slide inside during obvious nickel or passing situations and can create mismatches because of his quickness, his get off, and his length. So I do believe that this is a good addition. I have to give credit where credit is due. I'm not one of those dudes that wanted Trent Baalke gone and will never acknowledge anything that he has done right, because today, I mean, they did something good here. So kudos to the Jaguars. What it does, I think, regardless if they pick Hutch or Thibodeau or whoever early in the draft, it means that they have these numbers. And I made the same point with the cornerback position. I said that, the more guys they sign to guaranteed contracts or money, that those are spots that they don't have open. So if something does come to them, they have to think about how they're going to make room for it. And with the edge position, this I see a little bit differently because you can never have too many pass rushers. But the one similarity is they don't have to go looking and searching for depth. And what I mean by that is if they get one up top, before they got Arden Key, I would still think that they were probably in the market to get another one. I don't think that's the case here. I think if they get one up top, Arden Key, with where he is, makes them very formidable and very, very happy with them being able to have enough bodies at those positions, have enough depth at those positions without having to go out and force getting someone. So very, very happy with the fact that the Jaguars were able to get Arden Key. I got to tell you guys too that these draft prognosticators are tripping me out because they're really trying to guess who it's going to be for the Jaguars. Another kudos to the Jags and their staff. They haven't given it away. They absolutely have not given any hint who they're going to take, and that's exactly what you want. It's almost like OPSEC, Operation Security. You want people to have to guess at what you want to do, because then it creates a little leverage for you if you're going to play that whole game where you negotiate whether or not you're going to sign a guy. And like I said, they've done a pretty good job. You may not like the receivers and the skill position guys they got and how they spent the money, and people around the league are talking about how they spent the money and whether they spent too much money. But these are good signings, and these guys are choosing Jacksonville over other people, other teams. So it's a good look. The fact that they were able to get Arden Key, who was a big key for the 49ers last year in their pass rush. I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about in segment 2 here is messaging. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Shad Khan was talking about the Bills fans on sort of the same day that they announced that they've extended with Wembley. And I thought messaging is an issue. So there are some people that says it's no big deal and he wasn't virtue signaling, but it's not what he was trying to do. It's probably what he did by accident. And to me, that's what I have a problem with. I think when you've been as bad as Shad Khan, you need to focus on your own team, and your own fans don't need to hear you talking and bragging about someone else. So we'll get into that here in segment 2, and I'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you guys about Built Bar is the best protein bar in the world. It's the best snack in the world. And the reason why it's all of those things is because, 1, it's good for you, but 2, it absolutely tastes delicious. That's right. You're going to eat it because it's covered with 100% chocolate, and you're going to eat it because it tastes good and they have all of these different flavors for you. And you're going to eat it because it's also healthy and it does not make you feel guilty about eating something you're not supposed to pre and post workout or just as a snack during the day. These puffs, man, it's a protein infused marshmallow, and it is absolutely delicious. They're marshmallow, how we say it, if that's a word, but they also cover 100% chocolate. They have a little different texture than the original Built Bar, but they're awesome. They are fabulous. And I got to see if I can get back to my salted caramel, because that banana cream pie is busting, as those young kids say. Most of the macros are really off the chain: 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of carbs, and about 17 grams of protein. So they're packed with it. And you can get yours at built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. That's right. Go to @bar_built on Twitter for all the latest news and information on your Built Bar. Rolling along here on a Wednesday for segment 2 here with Locked On Jaguars. Listen, I'm not going to make a big deal out of what Shad Khan, and you can Google and read his quotes. He was at the owners meeting and he talked about and he bragged about how they were talking about the Bills Stadium, I guess, and he was talking about how he's always admired Bills fans and how they travel with their team, and everyone knows about the mafia. All of that is good, and he didn't tell any lie. He told, what he told the truth. As far as I'm concerned, he spoke his mind, and he really, he really didn't smash on the Jaguar fans, unless you understand Jaguar fans. So some people have not been really offended by what Shad Khan said here in Jacksonville. I just think that messaging has always been an issue here. And to my credit, it did become an issue because there were people on social media that were going back and forth and were talking about it, which is exactly my point. So why would they be offended by something that didn't really intend to offend anyone? I'll tell you why. It's because they're Jaguar fans. And I'll tell you what Jaguar fan has endured and suffered, just in case you guys don't know. They've endured and suffered, right? Because of losing. They have been victimized, in my opinion, by bad messaging from the team. By poor messages. There's this narrative out around the country that somehow the Jaguars are bad because they have a bad fan base and nobody cares about winning, and that's just not true. They talked about things like viability, and they keep moving games overseas, and hopefully this team gets good, and all. And when they are really good, all of those games that they sign up for in the future are already promised somewhere else. So to not be overly sensitive about it, he didn't say anything terrible about Jaguar fans. He didn't really even insinuate anything. But if the guy who's responsible ultimately for making this team a winner, who's failed to do that and who's had bad messaging in the past, and you hear him bragging and gloating, if you will, about someone else's fan base, fans that happen to kind of tear one neighborhood up to pieces when they came here, and you just don't want to hear that. What if your significant other never compliments you, but you hear him complimenting somebody else? How would that feel? So while it's not derogatory towards you, it's just that they're doing something for someone else that they won't even do for you. When's the last time Shad Khan said anything positive about Jaguar fans instead of just saying what people need to do to make that team viable? That's the point. The messaging. If I talk about fans, if I'm the owner of the Jaguars, I'm going to be saying something good about my own fans. I'm not going to go out of the way to praise another city's fans, especially when you know your fans are great, because they continue to endure and continue to show up and continue to support a product that has been awful. So this is what I mean by messaging. Was it terrible? Nah. Did he mean? Nah, he didn't. So it's not that he did something horrible. It's just that he didn't do something that he probably should do. And that's talk about his own fan base the way he gloats and gloated and talked about the Bills fans. That's all I'm saying. It's just messaging. You can disagree with me, but a lot of people didn't. And it was a talking point. And it was a whole bunch of, quote unquote, this guy just doesn't get it. It was a whole bunch of, quote unquote, why does he keep doing stuff like this? He needs to hire a PR guy. That in and of itself is evidence that he probably should have just kept his mouth shut unless he was talking about Jaguar fans. I'm not saying censorship. I'm talking about the judgment. He can say what he wants to say, and I can say what I want to say in response to what he says, right? So for me, he ought to be doing more to ingratiate himself with his own fan base. Say something good about the people that keep buying tickets when the product is terrible. That's who you need to talk about. I wouldn't be worried about anybody else's fans if my house was in disruptive order the way his has been for the last 10, pretty much since he's on the team, with the exception of one season. That's all. This is all. This is me just taking up for the people. It's not clickbait. It's not any of that stuff. It's me taking up for the people. And I just think that you have to have a concerted effort to make sure that any energy you have is directed at your fan base and no one else's, because they already feel like they're having to share you with London. You got me? So like I say, no big deal, no harm, no foul. Just if I was him, if I could give him some advice, just kind of go out of your way, man, to pacify your own people before you do it to somebody else. That's all. All right, third and final segment coming. We're going to talk about something that doesn't necessarily benefit the Jaguars yet, but could in the future. We're going to talk about the overtime rules and the owners making a mistake by not going far enough. And I'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars on a Wednesday. I'm going to tell you guys about rockauto.com. What is Rock Auto? Rock Auto is a family-owned business that's been in business for 2 decades, and what they do is pride themselves on giving you the best car parts in the world with less money coming out of your pocket. I can attest to it. It is the absolute truth. I have a daughter that is now living in Charlotte, and I'm always talking about her car and the things that she needs. And I take comfort in the fact that when she needs something, I can get it from rockauto.com, and it'll be exactly what she needs, even some accessories is in her vehicle, to make sure that while she's on the road, she's traveling safely, and it makes me feel good. You guys have kids that are in college, and it could just be your significant other driving back and forth to work every day. You want to have the best parts for your car, and you want to pay the best prices. And the only place you can do that is Rock Auto, because they have an amazing selection, reliably low prices, and all the parts your car will ever need It's at rockauto.com. Now, check this out. When you go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car, right, Locked On in there, how did you hear about us box, so that they know you're family and you were sent by us. So make sure you check it out. Anything your car will ever need, from the rooter to the tutor, baby, from the front to the back, you can get it all at rockauto.com. And we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. I remind you, this show, as well as our NFL show, the Locked On NFL, is on YouTube. We have a Locked On NFL YouTube page. I want you guys to make sure you go over there and check it out. Yours truly on Wednesdays. I was over there today with James Rapine. And every single day from Monday through Friday, they have a different group on to give you perspective from around the NFL. But it's the same old consistency, man. So make sure you check it out. The draft is coming up, and the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast will be of great help to you as well, with analytics expert Ryan Tracy, along with former NFL corner Eric Crocker, and they give it to you like nobody else. So make sure you like and subscribe both of those podcasts and follow on YouTube. Overtime rules were changed by the NFL owners, and in typical NFL owner mannerism or manner, they failed to go all the way. It's like, I can't stand people that fix something, but then they don't quite fix it. And it's like, we got to come back and address it all over again. Now, my wife will tell you that's probably, I'm describing myself, so I'm glad she's not here to pop me upside my head and say, you're a hypocrite because you always procrastinate. But there's no one who knows procrastination better than a procrastinator. And I'm telling you that the NFL had the chance to get this right, and they screwed it up. So here's what happened. They're going to make sure that both teams get the ball in overtime, regardless of how the first team scores. It used to be that a touchdown was scored on the first drive, ball game was over. We saw it with Buffalo and KC, and they had the opportunity actually to refuse it, because the week after Buffalo KC, it was Buffalo Cincinnati. I mean, it was KC and Cincinnati, and Buffalo actually did stop KC. They got a turnover, and then they went and scored. So the owners could have really sat on this and went, no, the system works, because just like it went one way one week, the next week it went the total other way. So there's nothing wrong with the system. But no, they made sure that both teams would be able to get the ball in overtime. Here's the catch: only in the postseason. Now, you think you would want a standardized way of doing things from the regular season to the postseason. So what happens if it's the last game of the year and that game decides who goes to the playoffs? Why is that not considered unfair? One answer that may differ from the postseason to the regular season is, well, in the regular season, ties are allowed. In the postseason, you can't have a tie because someone has to advance. So for me, wanting everything to be standardized and consistent, there are probably some people that go, "Nah, brother, it ain't consistent at all." I'll tell you why it's not consistent. Because the rules from the regular season overtime changes anyway, because you can actually have a tie in the regular season and you can't have a tie in the postseason. So you can get standardization out of your mind. It's just, to me, it's just going to come right back up where maybe teams have a different strategy for overtime. Like in the regular season, you're going to take the ball first. I do think that since both teams are getting the ball now, that there are going to be teams now that will defer and put their defense on the field if that's the strength of their team, and they're really going to hope that the field position will matter. Like if you get a 3 and out with a penalty and a team is punting from its own 15-yard line, that you're going to get the ball, especially in inclement weather, you're going to get the ball at a more favorable position or a favorable place than you would get it if it was just 2 touchbacks. So I think one of the things that's going to end up happening and occurring is there's just going to be, the coaches are going to have 2 different strategies for the exact same scenario between regular season and postseason. And that part of it is what I think stinks, because you kind of want to know exactly what you're doing at all times and do it the same way each and every time. I'll tell you what I do the same way, and that's this podcast each and every time here on Locked On Jaguars. I try to bring you the great content and all of the things that are going on with the team. Look, man, we're getting closer and closer to the draft. You guys have been there with me every single day, and we appreciate it. That's going to be off the chain. I know you guys are going to be very, very happy with what goes on draft night, whether they pick Hutchinson or whether they don't. And we're getting closer and closer to it. So make sure you tune in every day, because as we get closer, I'll have more and more information and do more and more interviews with folks that'll give you a different perspective. Thank you for joining me here, making us your first listen on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. I am Tony Wiggins, and we'll see you here, same bat time, same place tomorrow.